Hey, this is Christian Roldan.
And Jordan Morris from the Seattle Sounders Football Club.
And you're listening to
This is Nos Audietis.
This episode of Nos Audietis is sponsored by Full Pull Wines, a Seattle-based wine retailer and proud sponsor of Nos Audietis since 2011. Full Pull was founded in 2009, is based in Seattle, and is owned and operated by longtime Sounders supporters. They offer the best boutique wines of the world to members of their mailing list, with special focus on their home, the Pacific Northwest.
Here we go. Come on! Hey, O'Shan! Let's go!
A sideline fry! The Seattle Sounders have done it! MLS Cup winners!
Here comes Rodriguez through the middle to crown it for Seattle! And now they truly can start the celebrations. It's the Sounders MLS Cup.
Nicola leaves absolutely no doubt! The Sounders rule the region!
Seattle Sounders is going to do it!
They've scored! They've scored! Finally!
This feels fucking awesome.
This is a tiny dog.
Is that what you young people call twerking?
And Longacres says, cheated!
You want to win? This is the Seattle Sounders, bro.
Welcome back to Nos Audietis. I am Jeremiah O'Shan, joined today by a very special guest, Adrian Hanauer, majority owner of the Seattle Sounders. We're sitting here in quite an impressive space, the Longacres training facility, in a really nice room that has a view of the actual, like, you can watch training from here.
I can. I was telling you, Jeremiah, on the way up here, I grew up working in very uncomfortable and kind of, maybe for lack of a better phrase, a kind of a shithole building. Grew up in manufacturing and did all the worst jobs because my dad made me do all the worst jobs. And honestly, like there were some moments here where this made me a little uncomfortable because it's really nice.
It is very nice.
This area that I hang out in is amazing and but it's awesome. Get to watch the guys train from up here every day. And there's nothing better than watching soccer as your job.
Yeah. So I don't know how many people really realize this, but you are here virtually every day, right? And you're watching training. You're going to game. I mean, you were at Starfire last night. You were just telling me.
Yeah, for sure, dude. Like, I own a soccer team. Like,
right.
What? Like, I do sometimes joke. I'm not sure if I've told you this, but I love watching training. I love watching the academy games. I love the data and the analytics and the sports science and the strategy and the roster building and the business, all of it. And honestly, I kind of hate the games. The first team games at Lumen are just painful for me, excruciating. And again, in the early years, my girlfriend used to joke, if we lost, I didn't want to go out for the weekend, didn't want to go to dinner, didn't want to do anything. I've kind of gotten over that. But look, I'm a fan. So, and I feel super helpless during the games. So anyway.
Well, I think that informs a lot, right? I think I don't know how many people, it's now been 10 years since you were the GM of the Sounders, but you were the GM of the Sounders from what, 2009 of the USL, you were essentially, right?
Yeah, 2002.
2002.
Yeah.
To all the way to 2014, right?
Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah.
I mean, that was a long. I mean, you were making signings. You were negotiating trades. You were doing. How much are you still involved in that way?
Probably more than Craig and the rest of the team would like me to be. I love that part, and I don't think I'll ever be able to give it up. I have a lot of relationships globally, so I will. watch players. I'll call agents. I do still watch a lot of video. At a certain point, I hand it to the professionals. But look, I do think there is a benefit when I call an agent, say, hey, this is who I am. I own the Sounder. I usually get a call back. And it to me, it shows a little bit of respect. It shows a little bit of the passion that I have for the game. And so that can often unlock a conversation that would be harder to unlock. Or calling the owner or president of a club, that maybe has a player or there's something we want to understand about the way they do business. So I am super involved. I'm still, on the product strategy committee at the league level, have been doing that a long time. So I understand our rules pretty well. And our rules are, as you know, pretty complicated at times. And I believe that some of what I know and some of my experience, continues to, probably it's fleeting, the competitive advantage that maybe that gives us. But I do still know a thing or two about how to put the roster together. And I think I can just be, I think I can ask good questions of the people that work with me on that, because again, to your point, I've done it for a long time.
So among the other owners who are on the product strategy committee, I'm guessing, I know none of them have been a GM of, at least not of an MLS team, or maybe.
Yeah, that's probably true. Maybe.
But do you think that does sort of give you some advantage in terms of trying to steer the league in a way that you feel like maintains some advantage for a market like Seattle?
Well, no, because my job on the product strategy committee is to do what's best for the league overall, not Seattle. Sometimes decisions that we make, I might support, may disadvantage Seattle, and sometimes it may advantage Seattle. So, but I do think that having run a team at the level of detail that I have, and again, people that work with me know that, maybe to a fault, I'm willing to get stuck into the details. I think that's helpful. I think it's been helpful to the league and that committee and making our league better. I guess not necessarily for me to say, but I'd like to think I've added a little bit of value.
Well, and I suppose you can chart the way that the league has gone recently, and spending is undeniably going up, right? You can, and that's true with the league, that's true with the Sounders, that's true with the highest level teams. And I think it's, we just did an analysis on Sounder at Heart that looked at took this down, the money that Sounders are spending, at least publicly, on salaries. We combined that with information from Transfer Market that makes an estimation, admittedly, over how much is being spent on transfers. And, it wasn't so long ago that the Sounders were a top quarter type spending team. And you look at it now and it's a little closer to the league average. Is that a trajectory that you expect to continue? And do you think that that's a trajectory that's sustainable in terms of also maintaining the competitiveness that the Sounders have been at?
Yeah, look, you and I have talked about this a bunch. I don't pay very much attention to where we're spending relative to other teams. We've always said we're not going to spend the most. Right. We're not going to spend the least. What I'm super focused on is spending the right amount of money to always be competing for championships. And I did, I took one quick look at some of your analysis, and of course it's awesome as always. You can make data look however
Absolutely.
you want it to look. I took a quick look at Transfermarkt, and our team is ranked third in terms of asset value in the league.
Yes.
Is it true? Is it not? I mean, apples to apples, Transfermarkt is okay. They do a pretty good job. So, again, I'll give you a very specific example. I'll give you a general thought. I would rather sign a player that has a $5 million asset value on a free than pay $5 million to his team and then have him on my team.
Right.
Like and there are teams out there that, focus heavily on free transfers and or undervalued assets. Right. And so, that is a piece of what will continue to make us good and punch above our weight. Paying at the right times for the right roles that we feel like we need. It's for sure going to happen, has to happen. Certain positions are harder to fill than others. But again, there is so much more that goes into winning championships than how much you spend on the roster. And I think you pointed it out that there is it's pretty hard to find any correlation in our league over the last bunch of years from how much you spend winning championships.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's an undeniable truth right now, that if you just run a basic correlation between spend and points every year, you end up with almost none.
Yeah. Well, and I believe, because that is true, because I mean, look, obviously, you can waste money, no doubt, but I would say generally you get what you pay for. The market is pretty pure and accurate. But are you putting the right group of individuals together on the field? As you know, I'm a massive believer in culture. Is the locker room tight? Are guys willing to work hard for each other and for the club? Are guys mentally strong to get through the rough patches? And then all of the supporting staff, right? I mean, getting the medical right and getting the sports science right, and the equipment and the diet and the training facility, all of those other things. Each, look, again, I'm making this up on the fly, but if you say the specific players on the field are 60% of the equation, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that is 40% of the equation. So you better be paying attention to all that stuff, or it doesn't really matter what players you bring in. Again, there is some level of disparity in spending that kind of flips that model. And
throughout Europe, where money does equate to performance.
Yes. Yeah. Although you could point to England and say there are some outliers that have spent an extraordinary amount of money that are not yet winning.
Well, right. That's absolutely true. That you can still spend dumb money is essentially what you're saying, is that you can just because you're spending money doesn't guarantee success. That spending smartly is better than spending a lot. But I would assume you would also agree that spending a lot of money smartly is hard to beat.
Exactly. Always better. Yeah. Always better other than for running a sustainable business.
Other than running a sustainable business. And I guess do you feel like is there more room to spend? Is there we're coming up into a pretty big off season this next year. You have 2 designated players who are going to be out of contract. You have a Club World Cup coming up in 2026. 5.
Yep.
Thank you. Next year.
Yep.
It's going to be played in the United States. It's an opportunity that will probably never come, at least soon, probably is not going to come, where the Sounders are both in the tournament and potentially hosting part of it, or at least playing in the host country. How much, do you feel well positioned to take advantage of that opportunity, I guess, and is there a monetary component to that?
When you say, is there a monetary component to that?
Like an investment.
Well, look, complicated question. We probably plays into a little bit of what's happened this year. I was really excited going into this year because I believe we've got a great group of guys and quality across the board and depth. Obviously the first 14 games have been frustrating for all of us. I think for all of us. I know for me.
For me, yeah. I'll just put it out there. I have not been thrilled with the first 14 games.
Yeah. And part of the frustration, obviously, is that we don't yet know what our full team's potential is.
Absolutely.
It's an excuse and a problem because it's an easy way out of saying, well, we're only on 14 points from 14 games because we haven't had our whole, but the reality is we haven't been able to keep all of our players on the field and healthy. And so, when you and I, when we're just talking about spending, doesn't do much good spending a bunch of money on players if they're not going to actually be on the field. So that is something that we are working on aggressively to try, to see if there is something different in our preparation, in our scheduling, in the workloads, in the, in how we're recovering from injury. We need to, no stone can go unturned at this point to get the right group on the field. And so that said, we want to go into the Club World Cup with a squad that we feel can compete. Again, being somewhat realistic, back to your, there is some disparity in spending. We are not going to be able to put a team on paper that should compete with Manchester City.
Right. There is still a slight delta between your payroll and Man City's.
Yeah. But we can have 11 players on the field that will work harder than them, be committed to each other more than they're committed to each other, be motivated by this tournament more than, there still is not any determination in ink as to where these games will all be. So maybe with a little bit of luck and persuasion, maybe we're playing in front of our home fans. So
that's still a possibility, is what you're saying.
That is still a possibility. Okay. Yes. Look, the answer is we'll do what we need to do to have as competitive a squad as we can for Club World Cup. We also then have to balance. I guess 3 games minimum, but
Potentially just 3 games.
but it's potentially just 3 games. We need to, focus on that, as well as MLS, as well as Leagues Cup, as well as, I guess we'll see whether we play Open Cup in 2025. And so
has there been any, this is not what I want to get into necessarily, but I am curious. Has there been any discussion about how MLS teams will fit in, how a Club World Cup can even fit into the count? I know there's like talk in Europe about how, like the European players are talking about refusing to play if certain accommodations aren't made. I mean, what is how is MLS going to balance that? I mean, presumably it would happen almost concurrently with Leagues Cup, or at least right before Leagues Cup.
There are conversations. Nothing has been locked in. I mean, the reality is we'll either have 1 MLS team or 2 MLS teams in Club World Cup. So it's easier to manage, I think, as opposed to having 15 of our teams in the competition.
Right. So in terms of looking at this upcoming year, or I guess in terms of the Club World Cup, there's been a rumor flying around that every team's going to get $50 million to plan this thing. Is there any, have you gotten any word from FIFA as to what the minimum payout is going to be? And I guess, does that feed into the budgetary conversation?
Well, no, I haven't heard. I haven't even seen that rumor.
Okay.
I mean, I know there will be an appearance fee.
Yeah. $50 million seemed outrageous to me, but
yeah. Would that amount of money play into the budget? Yes, for sure. Hopeful, but skeptical.
Yeah.
So
in any case, that you're not at a point where you're able to say, well, we're getting X from the Club World Cup, we can just pump that right back into the transfer budget or whatever, the wage budget or the operational budget.
Nope.
And do you even get a sense of if you'll have that knowledge before you are in the budgeting phase?
Don't know.
Okay. So it's as of right now, it's effectively a non-factor. It sounds like. I mean, maybe not a non-factor, but it's you cannot build a plan around it.
No.
But I guess more broadly though, do you feel comfortable? You look at the teams that are spending money, and Austin FC is what has historically not been a high spending team. Just the other day, they bought out Emiliano Rigoni. They supposedly are buying a $7 million player. I mean, and this is one of the teams that's sort of on the bottom scale. But do you feel like the Sounders are at least in a position where the league is I guess, are you at all concerned about being passed by, or do you feel confident in the Sounders' ability to remain competitive regardless of the budgets?
Yes, I feel confident. So, it wasn't long ago that we deployed a pretty decent chunk of cash for a player as well. Right. Unfortunately, for Pedro, he's, hasn't been able to play a lot of minutes, but, so no, I'm not worried about being passed by. That, that could change, and, things evolve, but for right now, I'm confident in our group. I'm confident in the current group. Again, I still think if we can get ourselves healthy, this group can challenge for a championship. We do have some, we've got a little bit of room to maneuver in the summer, and things change in terms of how much maneuverability we could have beyond existing maneuverability. I am super pumped about some of the young players who've come through our academy. As we've seen, a team like Philadelphia has done amazing work with their academy. So if you blend, an amazing group, spending wisely here and there, great young players coming through the system, an occasional good free agent find, I'm still excited to see Nathan out there getting more minutes. Obviously, Albert came in as a free agent, so being able to identify those opportunities. This facility plays into that. Guys, I've talked to Steph about it, gets up early, wants to be here. It's a nice place to come to work. And look, a lot of teams have nice places to go to work now. So it's not completely unique, but I'm, excited about this place. And I think we've just sort of scratched the surface on how we can leverage this facility to continue to recruit.
And I guess sort of along those lines, the opening of this facility was sort of the centerpiece, I think, of the 50th anniversary season that we're in right now. And I don't know, I think it's probably fair to say that the vibe around all of this has not been quite as positive as you probably envisioned. And I think it's probably mainly because the performance hasn't been what you had hoped, or that any of us had hoped. But generally speaking, I mean, how do you feel about the 50th anniversary and sort of the way that it's rolled out and sort of the general vibes around the team right now?
Well, so I don't know whose vibes you're feeling around this building.
For the fans.
Okay. Well, so I guess, how do I feel about 50th anniversary? I mean, I guess I would start by saying, it's kind of a year-long thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's also sort of the foundation of the next 50 years. So, the intent was never like a one-day, all-day block party kind of thing. I would also suggest that it kind of, for me, it kind of started with rolling out our new marks, that I think are beautiful and amazing and a great foundation for building. They may not last 50 years, but hopefully 10 or 20.
Yeah.
Building this facility is, a massive stake in the ground, a physical structure. Again, we've scratched the surface of this facility. How do we honor those that have come before, at this facility? How do we continue to improve and create more access for our fans at this facility, our members, primarily our season ticket members, but in an amazing, bespoke, experiential way that is a memorable touch point. Again, I'm jumping around, Jeremiah, but we're going to this July, we're going to have our giant Rave Foundation gala. We call it a gala. It's a party to raise money, and way more money now in this facility, in this iteration, to do all the important work in the community, build more fields, more programming, which, is sort of, again, putting a stake in the ground, building physical structures for generations of kids to come. As tactically as, 2 weeks ago when Pepe Fernandez and his family were there at our at the game. I can't remember who we were playing, but it might have been the Galaxy. But I got goosebumps. Pepe was my hero in 1974, and to see him out there and the reception from fans. Some of those fans had never seen him or had ever heard of him. continuing throughout this year, June 15th will be a big day. Probably the largest group of alumni that we've ever assembled for an event or a game. And we'll do more and more throughout the year. So that said, do I wish we had 28 points instead of 14 points? And would it all feel a little better? Probably. Maybe I'd sleep till 5 a.m. instead of 4 a.m. and be just a little less stressed out. But again, this is a club, again, 50 years in, want to set it up for the next 50. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And so again, I feel good about a whole bunch of stuff we've done. We can always do more. So I don't know if that answers it.
I mean, I think it gives a broad overview. But I would say one of the things that I hear from a lot of fans this year is that I think there was this general sense of pomp, maybe, that they felt like they might feel this year. And, you go back to, you can go all the way back to like the annual business meeting last year wasn't really available to fans to watch or attend. And then at the, when the season ticket package came out this year, it shows up in a nondescript bag. And there was some complaints about how that was delivered. And you can and then we had this Leagues Cup thing where a bunch of people got their credit cards charged for a full amount when it should have been just for one game, 2 games, something like that. And I keep hearing from fans that there seems to be if not a lack of attention to detail, but just maybe a lack of complete follow through in terms of like what we've come to expect from the Sounders, which is a really high level of delivery on promises and sort of feeling like this is a special thing. And I'm wondering if from here you get that feedback, and if you and sort of like how you grapple with that.
Yeah. So separate issue, right? So we've sort of covered off the 50, and
I think it's all part of the 50th anniversary. Like I think there was this expectation that the 50th anniversary would come out of being like, there's a lot going on here, and it just feels like it hasn't landed quite, like for a variety of reasons, and I think these are maybe some of the reasons why.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'll start by saying when we disappoint fans, it's excruciating for me, and the 100 people behind me here that work their butts off every day to try to do right by the Sounders. The fact that we have sort of this democracy in sport sort of DNA is helpful because we do get feedback. Again, I would categorize, I don't want to be defensive, because the reality is when we disappoint people, we need to be better. And at the same time, we're big kids here and we need to own our mistakes. So again, I don't want to go one by one necessarily, but like, the season ticket, the gift, beginning of the year, we actually still believe that it is a good idea. We heard from our fans, hey, I've got like 37 scarves. It'd be awesome if I could do something. We engaged a local partner to help us find a better way. We didn't execute well. The combination did not execute well, but we learned from it. And I actually think, I don't know this, but I suspect we'll do it again, but we'll do it way better the next time. Well,
while we're there, what did you learn from Like, what do you like? How do you like?
Oh no, I heard the same thing. Nondescript bag shows up, and it's interesting because I had seen, actually, when I first heard that 2 days earlier, I had seen a different bag that a different department in our organization was using, and I grabbed it. I'm like, this is a really nice bag. This would have been amazing to get maybe the right product, a message from, from me or leadership or something. It just, it wasn't executed to the level that we would have expected of ourselves. And again, it's our issue. We had a partner in it. That we'll make sure collectively that it's better. Charging people for credit card, human error. People make mistakes. We started to correct it within 2 hours. And, we have made, in the 23 years that I've been involved in the Sounders, we've probably made 1,000 big mistakes, maybe 10,000. I don't know. We will make a bunch of mistakes going forward, and but we have to learn from them. We have to, maybe our processes need to be, a double check, something where we can eliminate mistakes. But I think the main thing that I would leave you with is I agonize over this stuff. It kills me when we screw stuff up or we disappoint fans. There are certain decisions we're going to make that are going to be purposeful. We know we're going to disappoint some fans. Like you're never going to make everybody happy. But screw ups or things that we could just execute better, that's really disappointing. The annual business meeting, alliance, we need to, collectively, again, we need to do better and figure out what people would be excited about in terms of that event. So, and I'm sure you probably have a list of 20 more, and I could probably come up with 20. Right. But I think we don't try to screw up and disappoint people. We are human, but we have to own it when we do.
So I guess if the reason I bring it up is just kind of the broad idea that it feels sometimes like on the outside that attention to detail has been lost, and it sounds like that's not it's certainly not the intention.
The intent, yeah.
But you're confident that these are issues that are more isolated. I shouldn't be summing up your argument.
No. I look, I hope that is the case. And I'll actually add one that has come to our attention over the last, I would say, 30 days, doing focus groups, listening to our fans. Concurrent to that, I actually heard from a couple of alumni that we used to do, felt like pre-COVID, that the Sounders, like players were out in the community more. Pro shop,
sure, yeah.
Whether at a retail
bagging
partner,
groceries.
Bagging groceries, yes, all that stuff. And I think that legit, that's a bit of a miss. COVID created certain habits that are sometimes harder to break. But when Hugh brought that to my attention, I wandered straight down into Brian Schmetzer's office and said, hey, like this is something we need to start to rectify. And his attitude was, what can I do? What can I do to help? Like, we're on it. And by the way, I also talked to Christian Roldan, who had the same attitude. And so, that is, call it an attention to detail, call it a bad habit. We got it. I don't know, but it's something that we heard from our fans, and we're gonna fix. Again, for me, the really cool part is that we can do some amazing work here at this facility. In that regard, we can still go out, off campus as well. But I've sat here and watched 100 or 150 people on the deck here, under the deck, interacting with players, watching training. I think you and I talked about this. We could add a couple, three. We got some good feedback from some of those fans that came out, some of those season ticket members that came out. Hey, could you have like a portable merch, thing here, which makes some sense. What's that?
A coffee stand.
Well, yeah. Or could you jam a breakfast burrito in people's hands with a cup of coffee? One of the ones I want to do is have one of our coaches come address our fans and say, this is what you're going to see today. Having some players come up after training and sign up, it's such a great opportunity to create a really amazing experience for 100 or 150 members at a time, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times a month. That adds up and is the kind of stuff that our club has done in the past and needs to continue to focus on.
Well, this might be a good transition into talking about this facility and sort of what it can be. 6 months, 8 months ago, something like that, I talked to Hugh, and he mentioned, he confirmed that you guys are exploring potentially even building a first team, a proper stadium out here on the Longacres footprint. And I'm just curious what you can say about where those conversations are and what goes into the thinking. Like, is it that, I think we've all seen the experience at Lumen Field is not quite as, it sometimes it becomes more obvious over the years that you guys are a tenant and not operating Lumen Field on your own. And if you could just speak to the general future and sort of what you're looking for out here and what is going into whether or not it's a good idea or it's not, because it sounds like that's an unclear, you are not at a point where you've decided one way or the other.
No. Well, as or maybe I'll just sort of back up. This campus is about 160 acres. Currently, Alaska Airlines is a tenant in one of the buildings here. But we are, I think, basically the other tenant on the campus. So it is a giant blank canvas for what we want to build here. There is master planning going on. And when I say what we want to build here, the Sounders are part of a real estate group that owns this campus and is managing it. Certainly there could be some housing on this campus. Things have been kicked around. You could do amazing, festivals on this campus. There could be hotels, there could be music, there could be more office, medical. So I'm dancing around this, not giving super specifics, but there's a lot of potential. But there's also a couple of different 10-acre parcels that would fit a stadium. So we start there in that, in the 23 years I've been associated with the team, we've never, I don't want to say controlled a piece of land because the Sounders don't control it, but have sort of been in the midst of a real estate partnership that has the potential for the size of land necessary to build a stadium. Then I think I've mentioned before, after this year, we have 8 years left on our lease at Lumen Field.
2032 is the expiration.
Yep. And I think that's a public record, and Seahawks kind of the same. So, there is an element of, look, I'm assuming that stadium is going to still stand and that there are going to be sports teams playing there, but it would be irresponsible of us not to have a plan B. Then the more, the longer term, more strategic analysis is, can we put the funding together to get a stadium built, and would it be a net positive for our fans? Basically, I think it's as simple as that. Again, in the realm of not pleasing everyone, I am certain that there are, if we ended up building a stadium down here someday, that there would be some fans who would not like it, and it's more inconvenient. And but to your point, it would be ours. It would be soccer focused. It would be intimate. It would allow the club to generate more revenue, which, plays into your line of questioning around spending money on players. We can create, it becomes a home for our fan base. It's connected to this facility. There are a lot of logistical benefits. There's a train station 100 yards away. The ingress egress is actually quite good. So there are a lot of positives. But ultimately, we will do a bunch of research and talking to our fans to understand, what the reaction would be to that. So but it's going to be a process of research and feasibility and conversations with our partners at Lumen Field, and the trust, the estate of Paul Allen does still own part of the team, and we want it to be collaborative, and I'm assuming that the state, the county, City of Seattle, City of Rent, will have opinions as well.
And just out of curiosity, how big can a facility here be? Is that do you have a sense of what even the limitations are?
Oh, I think we have the capacity to build just about anything we wanted. I don't know that it would make a lot of sense to move out of a 69,000 seat stadium and build a 59,000 seat stadium. I don't think that is the direction we're headed.
Right. But I guess the flip side to that is you're not limited to, say, a 20,000 seat stadium.
Not necessarily. No.
And I guess in the meantime, you still have 8 years left at Lumen Field. What ability do the Sounders have to improve their situation at Lumen? You're renting, obviously. You are paying, but you do have some level of partnership there. Are there we've talked about in the past of digital ad boards, a permanent home locker room. I don't know if this is even on there's all kinds of there's a laundry list of things that you would like to have at Lumen Field. And I'm just curious, how much ability do you even have to get those things?
Look, our partners at First and Goal, Seahawks, Lumen Field have been awesome. Have we gotten everything we've wanted? No, for sure not. Are they fair? Yeah. I mean, sometimes I don't feel like they're being fair to us. Sometimes they are. For sure. Again, look, Jeremiah, you started asking that question, my mind went to owning your own building, controlling your own building, let's be super honest. Every sports team on the planet wants to control their own building, so that those questions you're asking are a non-issue. Look, there is a bunch of money being put into the stadium. There is investment going in, improvements, some in the premium spaces, some up higher in the building. I think that's fantastic. The building is 20 plus years old, and it's shocking that 20 years buildings become dated.
Yeah.
But it does need some improvements. Again, to your point, it would be amazing to have our own locker room. But I know the Reign feel the same way. They'd like to have their own locker room in Lumen Field as well. And so I guess the best I can say is we try to work together. We try to collaborate. They're not purposefully trying to make it, feel like the Sounders are a secondary tenant there, but there are some realities to running it's a state-owned building that has a lot of different events there. Music and monster trucks and football and car shows and music, and it's a complicated puzzle. It is.
Well, that was a good transition, and this is maybe a good place to end it. We've been hearing a lot about Seattle Reign coming under the Sounders umbrella. It's still not official as of, what is today, May 23rd. What is the status of that? And, what can you say about the Reign sale?
So as we announced, we did sign the PSA. That was quite some weeks ago.
I think months,
probably. I guess I was adding lots of weeks up, hoping you wouldn't notice. That equals months. We're still in the closing period. We when we have something meaningful to announce, we will announce it. I can say, independent of that, some of the team here have been spending a lot of time with the Reign, just getting to know that organization a little bit better, trying to provide, again, independent of a transaction that is in process. Figuring out ways that we can collaborate. Can the Sounders help here? The Reign have some amazing people and ideas and methodologies. And as a matter of fact, I think I can say this. Some of the there were a few Reign players that did not travel on their recent road trip. They were out training with some of our academy kids, just making sure they got an extra, session in. And so there are some super cool opportunities to work together. We hope to have something more meaningful to announce in the coming weeks, not months.
Okay. Because you said weeks before, and then we met months.
It was weeks before, but yes, you're right. It did translate into months. So anyway, now I'm super excited about the Reign. Again, another team. I mean, I've either been to or watched all their games. Close. I mean, frustrating as well. A ball bouncing one way or another, a penalty call here and there, and look back to the Sounders and the, again, frustration, but some hope. I mean, it is pretty easy for me to see, given the season, another 4 to 7 points that were legit dropped, or maybe a call didn't go our way. And I feel like I'm pretty balanced. I don't look at any of our game. I don't see points that we gained unfairly, or so that's sometimes you're like, oh, well, we should have 6 points more. And
yes, I understand.
We should have lost those 6 points because we didn't get a penalty. So, 4 or 5 points today for sitting on 18, 19, 20, it's a very different vibe. And so look, at some point in the season, all of this is going to be moot, right? I mean, if we can't start collecting points, eventually you run out of time. I don't think we're there yet. We also, we definitely have more home games sort of in this next, at a certain point of stretch. Those will be really, really, really important games. So I imagine after that home stretch, we'll have a much better idea of, where this ends up. Maybe.
Well, I mean, yeah. As we're recording this, I'll note that if you beat St. Louis on the weekend, you would be in a playoff spot. So that's where we are in the season. Regardless of when this comes out, that kind of colors anyone's. That's
kind of a positive note to leave it on, Jeremiah.
That's my intention.
Wow, amazing! Right, and last night we had an amazing, fun win. Yeah, at Starfire.
We'll do a whole episode next time on the Open Cup and Starfire.
Okay, fair enough.
But Adrian, thank you so much for doing this. Again, this is an amazing facility. I think it's comforting, or I think it's worth reminding everyone that this is a passion for you, that this is something that you're deeply invested in, and that I really appreciate you sharing your thoughts, and hopefully the next time we talk, it's about drawing up parade routes or whatever.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, I'm Jeremiah Shan. This is Nos Arietes, and we'll get you next time.
We love you. Let's win another one.